Hi everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Buzzbaits. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, musician, singer-songwriter, although probably not a very successful one, as I doubt you've ever heard of me. Nevertheless, if you wish to check out any of my songs, please do so on this channel. Currently, I'm a mentor coach for university graduates who wish to be excellent officers within the British justice system. One of my other interests is science and the education of science. And by that, I mean the correct education of science. Which brings me to the reason why I'm here. A few months ago, I came across an individual on YouTube who is using the educational ignorance of others to benefit himself financially. He is using their literal interpretation of the Bible to gain access to their bank accounts. His name is Kent Hovind. He prefers to be known as Dr. Kent Hovind, but he is no doctor. Hovind is an American Christian fundamentalist. He denies scientific theories in the areas of geophysics, cosmology, in fact, any science that supports evolutionary biology. He uses YouTube to promote himself, his merchandise, and a dino park in which he claims humans once lived with dinosaurs. Yes, you heard me correctly. And he claims this all happened only 6,000 years ago. Although there is no debate within the scientific community about evolution, Kent Hovind loves to debate others on this particular issue. Creationism, yes, creationism, versus evolution. And he can become quite angry, quite hostile, and quite frustrated if he is challenged by people who actually know what they're talking about. I mean, real scientists.
Can you show me two created kinds that science would consider to be in the same clade? Can you? It's just yes or no. Yeah, can you do it?
I think elephants, let's assume elephants and
Okay,
mammoths.
so it's not a yes and it's not a no. Can we take that as a no?
What color is the sky, yes or no? Come on, you moron.
Calling me a moron will not hide your own willful ignorance of this subject.
As you can see from that last clip, the scientist Aaron Ra attempted to get Hovind to define what a kind is. Hovind refused to do this, and he used an avoidance strategy. However, Aaron wasn't prepared to let Hovind avoid this particular question. Hovind became angry, he became frustrated, and he ended up calling Aaron a moron. A rather immature response. However, if Aaron is a moron, according to Hovind, then Aaron is in good company, because Hovind has also called one of the greatest scientists in history a moron. Watch this clip.
But what do you mean teaching me basic science? What would he like to teach me? Tell him, go ahead, schedule a debate. We'll take him on next. James, get his number. You call him. You host most of the debates here, so have another one tomorrow.
If I could just touch on that, what I would like to do, Ken, is I'd like you to learn the word of what science even means, because Darwin's theory of evolution has been considered one of the most enlightening things that man has figured out. I forget the exact words that they used, but his realization of what we got going on here with the divergence of animals is considered one of the biggest scientific discoveries of all time. So if that's not science, I don't know what is.
I'm sure you don't know what is, because that is not science.
Well,
Darwin never
I'm just
saw
telling
any
you
animal.
what he's considered. His
Okay.
insight into the evolution of man and animals was considered one of the
I would consider
biggest.
Darwin a moron.
Yes, indeed. A man with no scientific qualifications considers his understanding of science to be greater than one of the greatest scientists that ever lived. A tad arrogant, do you think? Would you like to see if Hovind did answer that question about kinds? Let's see it from the perspective of a different scientist. Let's see what happens.
So it's not a species. You're saying a kind is not a species?
I think the word kind and species probably are synonymous at many levels, but I wouldn't restrict it to that.
You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You have to say what a kind is. If a kind is a species, then you're saying that they're not new species, and you're wrong because speciation occurs. If you're saying that a kind is anything other than a species, then that statement does not contradict evolution whatsoever, because every time new organisms come forth, they are part of that kind, which is a clade. You were talking about anything else. You're talking about mammals, talking about eukaryotes, whatever it is that you're talking about. Evolution does not require for new kinds to occur. They will always be within that kind. So you're either wrong or you're not contradicting evolution. Which one is it?
All right. James, I would request that you kind of keep track of the time. It looks like he's trying to monopolize all of the time. I would like half the time, please. So if you can please moderate as you're supposed to.
At least this time, Hovind didn't call the scientist a moron. However, as you can see, he did have a go at the moderator. Sadly, one of the people Hovind debated, Bill Ludlow, has passed away. Look and listen to how disrespectful Hovind is towards a man whom he debated and who destroyed Hovind within that debate.
Well, you wanted to have a moment of silence for Bill Ludlow, who I debated.
Absolutely.
Why?
Out of respect. It gave me time to reflect.
If he's dead, he's gone. What difference? He's nothing but rotting meat now. There
is no doubt that Mr. Hovind has some anger management issues. Watch this next clip. Professor Mayers, evolutionary biologist, simply asks Mr. Hovind to prove his model scientifically. And this is how Mr. Hovind reacts.
Well, my model is that every animal or plant will always produce after its kind. And there'll be variations within that kind.
You keep saying that over and over again, and
because it's true, and you're not getting it.
No, I do.
You do not get it. Dogs produce dogs, and you believe dogs and grass are related, and you teach students that, and you use tax dollars to do it. Man, go start a private school and teach that stupidity to kids who want to learn it. That's not science. Science is what we observe, study, and test, and demonstrate. That's not science. It's a religion. You have a religion, Herman. Admit it. Go ahead.
F5 again, Ken.
Hi, welcome back. Do you like my glasses? I'm trying to appear intelligent, just like Ken Hovind. I think from the clips that you viewed, you've got some understanding of the character of Kent Hovind. Arrogant, deceitful, rude, and a possible narcissist. But I could be wrong. He could be a delight to live with and successful in all his personal relationships. Perhaps I should ask one of his 3 wives. Hovind loves to say that scientists have to assume what they claim is true in evolution. But I believe Hovind is the one who makes ill-judged assumptions. For example, Hovind assumes that by following his version of a religious book, he will spend an eternity in a supernatural place called heaven, where he will be rewarded with eternal happiness. That really is an assumption. And here is why. A Scotsman, an Irishman, and Kent Hovind approached the gates of heaven. And standing at the gates of heaven is St. Peter. And in front of St. Peter is the big book. This is the book that tells St. Peter all the good and bad things we've done in our lives. Kent Hovind is the first to approach. St. Peter asks him, "What sort of life have you led?" Kent replies, "A good life, sir. I've always followed my version of the Bible, and I have always paid my taxes." St. Peter replies, "I haven't got the time to check this right now, but I trust you. For that, you get the top prize in heaven. You get to drive the Rolls Royce." Kent is ecstatic because it means he is correct and the atheists were wrong. He gets the top prize in heaven. He gets to drive off in the Rolls Royce. The next man up is the Irishman. The same question. The Irishman replies, "I have to be honest, sir, because you've got the book in front of you.
I've not always been faithful to my wife, and I've not always paid my taxes in time. It hasn't been the best of lives. St. Peter replies, I can't give you the top prize in heaven, but I can give you the second prize today, which is the pink Cadillac. The Irishman is happy with this, and he drives off in his pink Cadillac. The next man up is the Scotsman, and he approaches St. Peter completely pissed out of his brain. St. Peter asks him the question. The Scotsman replies, I've got to be honest, sir. If it moved, I had it. If it had a pulse, it was mine. I have led a very debauched life. St. Peter replies, for that I'm afraid I'm going to have to give you the bottom prize. You, unfortunately, will get the bike. So the Scotsman rides off in his bike, still happy because he's still pissed. 6 months later, he comes to some traffic lights in heaven. And at the traffic lights, sitting by the verge, is Kent Hovind, crying. He approaches Kent and says, why are you crying? You got the top prize in heaven. I got the bottom prize. I got the bike. And Kent says, yes, but I've just seen my wife, and she's on a skateboard.
If that does happen, Mr. Hovind, please don't get upset. You're in heaven. I'm sure God will approve a fourth wife.
So, is Hovind dumb or a very clever con man?
For many years, Hovind has been working from a script. Yes, those YouTube debates, nothing more than a well-rehearsed script. And I am sure that for many years, this proved effective. However, today we have the internet and we can check his claims. His claims about his education and his claim that he was a high school science teacher. Indeed, I would love to have been in one of those science classes. The purpose of this video is to try and prevent the intellectual abuse of children. It is to try and reach out to those who are currently supporting Hovind to show them that he is a con man, or at the very least, he is quite dumb when it comes to science. You're going to see in the following clips how he fails in areas such as physics and in chemistry, in geophysics, and most certainly within biology. I'm going to start with Bill Ludlow. And we're going to start really with Hovind's false interpretation of evolution. Because Hovind likes to convince his followers that evolution has something to do with the origins of the universe. It doesn't. Look and see.
The study of how life began is called abiogenesis, okay? Evolution began when the first single-celled life replicated. Change in frequency of alleles in a population over time. There are many hypotheses on how life began, but not a single one can be reduced to we came from a rock. Strawman argument. Here's one here. They talk about the conditions of life. Here's the Miller-Urey experiment here. It talks about lightning strikes, molecules, organic molecules. The meteorite hypothesis about amino acids that have been found in meteorites. The ocean iron sulfide hypothesis about deep sea vents. Liquid membrane hypothesis about lipids, how they form in spheres and how they could enclose molecules. RNA, the RNA, early RNA world, origin of life. Here we go. Not a single one teaches we came from a rock. It's just another straw man.
Now, you might think that once Mr. Hovind had been educated by a scientist that evolutionary biologists do not believe we came from rocks and that evolutionary biology textbooks do not teach this, that he would not repeat that error again. But he does, constantly. And why? Because he has to convince his followers that he knows what he's talking about. Evidently, he doesn't. Here is another clip of film where once again Mr. Hovind repeats that error. Unfortunately for him, he does so with the scientist Aaron Ra.
If you freeze oxygen, would you call that a rock?
Well, a supercooled crystal like ice, I guess, or I'm not sure if
We're
that's...
talking about oxygen right now.
Yeah, I don't know if...
frozen hydrogen. Can you freeze hydrogen to make it into a rock?
You're diverting to a different topic now.
The same topic. The same topic you would like to divert away from. But yeah, it's if we cannot ever refer to these things as rocks simply because they're frozen, because they're not actually minerals, then we cannot call them rocks. At no point ever were we rocks. No evolutionary biologist ever thought that we came from a rock. Why would you believe something so dumb as that evolutionary biologists think we came from rocks? Why do you keep repeating this lie no matter how many times you've been corrected?
Well, I haven't been corrected. You think
you've been corrected right now,
Not by me. What evolutionary biologist in history has made that claim that we evolved from rocks? I'm 48 years old, and I've never heard that except for creationists say it, ever.
Okay, let's I'm looking for the slides in the textbook now, but I have hundreds of textbooks. Do you believe that the Earth cooled down? Do you believe the Earth cooled down 4.6 billion years ago?
Kent, with all due respect, you are changing the subject right now.
No. This is exactly the point. Do you believe...
Exactly the point was for you to identify kinds. That was the only way that you could deal with my two items of evidence that I gave, was that we know things that are true to be, we know things that are verifiably, demonstrably, observably true about evolution, where we have no such information about creationism. That's one you have failed to address. You simply denied that it exists, and you redefined everything through the fallacy of equivocation, and you have failed to address the phylogeny challenge, so you can't address my issue with phylogeny either.
Well, we're on to 5 different topics. Let me answer the one about the rock.
Well, they're the same topics. These are the same topics.
Okay.
They're just...
Okay. I have in front of me the answer to your question. Here is a first grade textbook in my collection, which says, Earth has changed much since its formation 4.5 billion years ago. Do you guys believe the Earth is 4.5 billion years old? or 4.6 or 4.6297 and 3 months.
I will have to defer to the experts on this because I don't know the thermodynamics or the physics. There are other people who do that. I do phylogeny.
I'm showing you from the textbook, a first grade, I could show you from every year textbook, that the Earth formed 4.5 or 4.6 billion years ago, and it was a hot ball of rock. This is what the books teach.
Okay. Is metal also rock?
Well, yeah.
I've heard that it was rock and metal. My textbook said it was rock and metal. Matter of fact, I think my textbook said rock, metal, and gases.
So did this hot ball of rock...
How do you distinguish rock from metal?
Well, that would be an interesting question. I think there are quite a few metals that
especially since our bones are made of calcium, and that's considered a metal too.
Sure.
And you've already established that oxygen
you
cannot be considered a rock even if you freeze it.
Before you dance around the subject,
again,
I'm showing you the answer.
That nobody ever believed that we came from rocks.
No accredited evolutionary textbook teaches that we came from rocks. No biologist believes that we came from rocks.
God sent me here to help you then, because the textbooks clearly teach the Earth cooled down 4.5 billion years ago, and it was a hot ball of rock.
But that's planetary formation. That's not evolution.
Right. When do we start with evolution?
You're not up to the evolutionary part yet. You're at planetary formation.
Yeah. We're not talking about concretion here. We're talking about evolution.
You can go back to the nebula hypothesis, but that doesn't get you to evolution yet.
And even if we were to misdefine it the way he is here, where he wants to take descent with genetic and inherent genetic modification and somehow extrapolate that to planetary concretion, still we didn't come from rocks.
Yeah,
because this is obviously not a planet just of rock. It's also rock and metal and gas and other things that don't qualify as either of these things, like amino acids and so forth. Just being made of chemical, he's already admitted, does not mean rock. If you can freeze oxygen and you still wouldn't call it a rock, just like you wouldn't call ice a rock, then it's not rock because it's not a mineral. So we're done. You're wrong, Kent. Correct your error.
We're not done, and you are wrong, and I have nothing to correct. Now, the textbooks teach 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled down. It was a hot ball of rock. From that rock, the gases escaped and made an atmosphere of oxygen. From that rock...
So you're saying oxygen is a rock?
No, it came from the rock.
Okay, but oxygen doesn't come from rock.
Oxygen... Many of the rocks contain oxygen.
Oxygen is an element.
I agree.
What mineral does oxygen come from?
I don't know, but I can show you where the textbooks
doesn't come from a mineral, Kent.
The textbooks teach the Earth began as a hot ball of rock, and everything came from there.
Does hydrogen come from rock?
Apparently so.
How would that be apparent?
Well, you get a chemistry book and see how many rocks or minerals contain hydrogen in part of their chemical equation.
Well, many will contain the simplest of all elements, but that doesn't mean it comes from rock. You don't need rocks to create hydrogen. As a matter of fact, you need hydrogen to create rocks.
Wow. You asked me to point out where the textbooks teach this, and I show this clearly on my video.
And you failed utterly. The sad thing is you don't know that you face planted. That's the disturbing thing.
No,
or maybe that you do, but you realize that donors won't see it if you can gloss over it somehow. But hydrogen does not come from rocks. You can combine two hydrogens to make lithium, for example, and you can combine, or obviously helium, and then combine a third one to make lithium, and so on. And you can get up to rocks, but you can't get hydrogen from rocks because rocks may contain hydrogen, but rocks don't produce hydrogen.
So according to the theory in the textbooks, the Earth was a hot ball of rock 4.6 billion years ago, and the gases came out of those rocks. I didn't write it.
Which means that the rocks did not produce the hydrogen. The hydrogen pre-existed them, and still no evolutionary biologist ever believed we came from a rock.
As you can possibly see so far, Hovind is making a little bit of a fool of himself when it comes to the areas of science such as chemistry and the fact that he doesn't really understand chemistry, hence his failure with the rock. This next clip looks at the area of physics, and this is with Crocoduck, and this is a debate that you should watch on YouTube, because Crocoduck completely destroys Hovind. Crocoduck is a young man with a degree in physics, a degree which Hovind doesn't possess.
I said, argue about the time.
Okay, but this is related to time.
A light year is not a year. A light year is a distance.
Okay, Ken, let's try this again. If light has traveled for a light year, it has traveled a distance of a light year. How long has it taken it to travel that?
If it is traveling at 1 light year per second, then it's 1 second old.
Hold on. No, that's not my question. Let's say light has traveled a distance of a light year, yeah? How long does it take to get from the beginning to the finish line of this light year long racetrack?
With no other things affecting it, light would travel about 186,282 feet or miles per second.
And how long would it take?
It would take 1 year to go that distance.
Thank you, Kent. Thank you, Kent.
So, as you can see from that last clip, Crocoduck proved to Hovind what a light year is. He educated Hovind in what a light year means. And in doing so, Crocoduck proved that the universe is indeed almost 14 billion years of age. However, Mr. Hovind doesn't give up without a fight.
Okay, Kent, again, you're misunderstanding the physics. If the light, let's say the star started 6,000 light years away from us, and the light began moving toward us, and then God stretches the universe, and the light is now 13.8 billion light years away, say. And now the light, which started 6,000 light years away from us, is reaching us. Yeah?
I didn't say it started 6,000 light years away.
Let's say for the sake of argument that it started 6,000 light years away from us.
And that light would just now be coming on. I agree.
Yeah. And now we're looking at the light of a star that's 13.8 billion light years away, even though the light is 6,000 years old. Is that what you're saying?
That is one option. I don't know where they started from. All I know is the Bible 17 times says God.
Okay, hypothetically, it starts 6,000 light years away, and so we see light that's 6,000 light years old instead of 13.8 billion years old, even though the star is 13.8 billion light years away.
No, I disagree, because Adam and Eve could see the stars the first day. So they could not have started 6,000 light years away. Or he wouldn't have seen them. Nobody would have seen them till today. They would just now be flickering on in the universe. And we all know from history, people have always seen the stars. So I disagree. They started 6,000 light years away. But whatever distance they started doesn't matter. The fact is, you can answer the same problem of these great distances to the stars with either great age or a stretching of the universe.
Okay, but the answer is no, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But let's say they're a distance x away. Let's say they're 30 light hours away.
Here's for your theory.
Hello?
You have chosen to believe the stars indicate great age rather than stretching because you need billions of years for your crocodile to turn into your duck.
No, this thing happens independently. This has nothing to do with evolution whatsoever. Even if Charles Darwin was never born and evolutionary theory never came to fruition, this would still be the case. People would still be talking about this. But
one of the interesting things about Hovind, if you watch enough of his debates on YouTube, is that he continually makes the same errors in science. But he deliberately makes these errors to misinform his supporters. Now, you remember how Crocoduck educated him on the speed of light? Well, watch this.
You're back to completely missing the point. A light year is a distance. It is not a time.
Did you hear that, Kent? That was me face palming. I mean, how many times?
Do it a couple more times, please. Okay.
How many times, Kent? Let's try this again. Let's imagine a racetrack that is a light year long. Okay? Light is traveling at the speed of light down this racetrack.
Okay.
It is a light year long. How long does it take for it to get from the beginning to the end?
1 year.
There we go. Okay, let's say the track is 2 light years long. How long is it going to take for light to get from one end to the other?
2 years, if it goes at...
Let's say it's 20 light years long. How long will it take?
You know, we can pick every number in the solar system if you'd like. Go through this as far as you want to count. I understand.
Now, do you remember how Hovind disrespected the great scientist Charles Darwin by referring to him as a moron? Well, he doesn't stop with Darwin. He also disrespected Albert Einstein. And the reason he was disrespectful towards Einstein is because Einstein's equations support a universe which is almost 14 billion years of age. Watch this next clip.
I don't think anybody in the world is going to see the difference here. Okay, if the space between me...
Well, they need to learn relativity. I don't know what to tell you, Kent. General relativity is probably one of the most firmly grounded theories that has ever been developed. It has yet to be falsified. It has yet to come out with a bad prediction. Like I said, it's been predicting things 100 years on. If you don't like general relativity, tell you what, Kent, you learn differential geometry, you learn tensor calculus, you go ahead, you look at general relativity, you find the problems with it, and then you go and collect your Nobel Prize.
Okay.
If you think you can take down Einstein, go for it, man.
As I'm sure you're aware by now, it's important for Hovind to prove to his followers that the universe is 6,000 years of age. However, as you've also seen within this film, Hovind has a bit of a problem when it comes to the laws of physics, to the Big Bang Theory, to Hubble's equation, to Einstein's equation. And as you noted, he was actually educated by Crocoduck on what a light year is. But we've proved, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, that physics itself proves that the universe is indeed almost 14 billion years of age, despite the fact that Hovind continues to deny all of these laws of physics. Another area that Hovind needs education in is carbon dating. This next clip of film is a debate he did with Bill Ludlow. And in this clip of film, Ludlow educates Hovind on carbon dating. And you will also note how Hovind himself really doesn't understand carbon dating, because carbon dating itself also supports the fact that the universe, this planet where we live, is more than 6,000 years of age.
What can be dated? Samples must be younger than 50,000 years and older than 100 years. Did you know that?
Yes, sir.
Did you know that? Well, then why would you use a freshly killed seal and a live animal as evidence that the method doesn't work?
Why would a live animal...
And presenting a straw man or not?
No, Bill, why would a live animal give a wrong date? And if a live animal gives a wrong date...
You don't understand the method at all.
I do indeed.
No, you don't. If you just ask why a live animal would give a wrong date, you don't understand the method. The method, when the animal dies, Kent, it starts to deteriorate, carbon-14 to carbon-12. We can't, there's no way you could get an accurate method, a measurement from a live animal. No way. Well, if you don't understand that, you shouldn't even be talking about it. Right there. That one, X. That one, X. Okay?
I understand it very well. Now, if you want to change this topic of the debate to carbon dating, we can do that. But as far as human evolution, if modern humans were carbon dated, if you and I were carbon dated, would we give the same carbon date? We're both living in the same atmosphere, eating the same food. Why wouldn't it work for living? You showed a quote.
Work for living because we aren't dead yet. We're still in equilibrium with the environment.
Okay, then we should give the same.
You don't understand this at all.
I do. Bill, wake up. We should give the same date. We're both in the same environment. We're living, breathing the same air and eating the same food. Yes, we should give the same date, but we won't.
There's no date to give until you've been dead for at least 100 years, Kent.
Think about how silly that is, what you just said. There's no date. It should work on anything. How would you know?
It doesn't work on anything. It works on things that are between 100 years old, dead, 100 years dead, and 50,000 years dead. Okay? It doesn't work on alive.
Think about it. It should. If you and I are living in the same environment, intaking this, we should be in equilibrium with the atmosphere. I agree.
Right.
Are we?
So we can't measure how long we've been dead.
We can measure how much C14 is in us. That's a simple
it wouldn't tell us anything about how long we've been dead. Okay.
It would tell us, are we in equilibrium with the atmosphere? And do you know the atmosphere has always been the same? I think if you'll watch my slide presentation, you'll see that the atmospheric carbon is still increasing 28 to 37% every year. With the atomic bombs dropped on Japan and other nuclear testing, it has radically changed the amount of carbon in the atmosphere.
I understand that, but I also understand you don't understand how the method's used at all if you think you can get a date of someone that's alive. Okay.
You don't get it.
Probably stop talking about carbon dating because you don't get it.
I know, I get it completely. I don't think you get it at all. Yes, carbon dating is a measurement of how much carbon-14 is in whatever sample compared to the amount in the atmosphere. That is based on the obvious, that's based on real obvious assumptions that we know that the atmosphere has always been the same, and we know that's not true. And
no, we don't assume that.
And we know there's been no contamination.
Yeah, see, we don't assume any of that. I mean, we know differences in the atmosphere, and they account for that. So, but anyway, I mean, obviously you don't understand.
No, I think I do, Bill. Obviously you don't understand. Go ahead. Let's get back to human evolution.
I understand if you don't understand it, which is fine. I said at the beginning of this debate that we were going to look at both sides. I opened up with that. I said that, I'm not going to sit and just try and defend evolution against someone who doesn't believe it. We're going to look at both sides and see which side fits scientifically better. And this comes into debunking your side. But we'll have a chat about that. You've accepted that you don't understand isochron dating, and we'll take that for another point. But I'm just going to say now, it is proof of a closed system, and it is proof that the dating can be trusted.
Watch my video on carbon dating. I'll send you one for free. Text me your address.
Well, I mean, like, there's a ton of videos you can watch on carbon dating, but like all of these things are things that can be measured, right? So the atmospheric composition was different at one point in time. We can measure this based on fossil samples that we take from the ground, based on different dirts that we've taken from the ground. Like, there are tons of different ways that we can measure what the planet was like at any particular point in time, and those things are generally accounted for in their measurements. This is why we have entire scientific disciplines that feel like they can accurately date things, and it's why, in a multidisciplinary way, people tend to agree on the dating of things, like with very rare exception. Yeah, they might like go over, exactly how old things were, or they might have like new ways to refine their different types of dating techniques. But this idea that because the planet was different at one point in time, it's impossible to use any sort of dating method is just not true. It's just not how any of it works.
So why do you think Mr. Hovind went down the road of trying to make the statement that evolutionary biologists believe we come from rocks? Why go for that argument? If you watch the debate with the scientist Aaron Ra, you will note that Aaron is trying to get Mr. Hovind to define what a kind is. Mr. Hovind likes to use avoidance tactics. So he went down this road, and he came to a bit of a sticky end. Would you like to see a little bit more? I thought you might.
I think I've told you several times. The Bible says if they can bring forth, they are the same kind.
Unless they've now speciated. Would you? And you accept that? I've seen in some of your other videos. You accept that speciation happens, so they can no longer bring forth.
Speciation happens, but it's within very strict limits. There are 200
what are the
species.
limits?
Well, there are 200 species of squirrels. Someday there may be 500 species of squirrels. That
Then
doesn't
what are the
prove
limits?
squirrel. I think the limit is called squirrel. They're always going to be what's called a
because
squirrel.
of the law of monophily, they're always going to be eukaryotes too. They're always going to be mammals. They're always going to be eutherians. None of those things are going to change.
So
you still belong to every clade your evolutionary ancestors did. There was no point where you stopped being what they were. You can't grow out of your ancestry.
So I am still a pine tree.
Did I say or imply in any way that you were descended from a pine tree?
You said I'm still a eukaryote, and so are the pine trees.
Are you telling me that you are not a eukaryote?
Are you a pine tree?
Did I tell you that all eukaryotes are pine trees?
Yes, so are you a pine tree?
I told you. Can somebody back up the tape? When did I tell Kent Hovind that all eukaryotes are pine trees?
No, I didn't. You said no.
What he said for clarification, what he said was that all pine trees are eukaryotic. They're all eukaryotes, but not all eukaryotes are pine trees. Correct?
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
But your ancestors.
So at no point in your evolutionary history did a eukaryote give birth to a non-eukaryote. So, and the same thing applies throughout. So all the hundreds of times that in the last 20 years you kept saying a dog never produces a non-dog. I'm sorry, that's always been wrong. That's always been a straw man. That has never been a correct criticism of evolution. That has been a description of an evolutionary law which you have failed to understand lo these decades.
Again, the straw man, dogs will always give birth to dogs. Animals always produce the same kind. Of course they do. Darwin predicted every species would give birth to the same species, but populations change over time.
Here he is again, same question, but this time with Professor Herman Mayers.
All we've ever observed is dogs produce dogs. Nobody's ever seen anything other than that. Never.
Well,
So that is science. Drawing a line on a piece of paper saying dogs are related to anything else is simply imagination. This isn't science.
Dr. Mays, would we expect a population of dogs to have anything else other than dogs?
Well, there's a couple points on that. One, of course, organisms within a generation give birth. Dogs in one generation will give birth to dogs the next generation. That's obvious. And in fact, if that didn't happen, if dogs didn't give birth to dogs, or what we call like doesn't beget like, that's a fundamental principle of genetics that is essential for evolution to work. Because if offspring did not resemble their parents, we couldn't have evolution by natural selection take place in the first place.
If he's placed into a corner, he will make claims that there's some sort of conspiracy theory against creationism, that the scientists are making all of this up. You'll actually see him, this is very, very funny, you'll actually see him use a chart, all right? And this chart basically looks at the tree of life. But this is the thing. The chart that he uses actually comes from a children's book on evolutionary biology. And it has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on books that an adult evolutionary biologist would use to make reference to the transitional changes between a species. It really is a picture from a children's book. But he tries to convince his supporters that this is what evolutionary biologists use in respect of their research. Dumb? Maybe. It also might be that he's considering his supporters are dumb enough to believe this. Unfortunately, one or two of them might be. Oh, and he loves to make reference to the Steven Spielberg movie, The Green Mile. As you can see, Mr. Hovind continues to avoid the question of what is kinds. And the reason he does this is because once he's defined what a kind is, he then has to deal with macroevolution.
There are 1,000 species of bamboo, recognized species of bamboo. I don't know how many varieties or kinds of bamboo God made, which would be in the grass family, as you mentioned about the grasses. So I think that would be a valuable field of research that probably biologists should do. How many original created kinds were there?
Do you know any kind, any created kind that you could define besides a human being?
Why besides the human being? I think the human being is a classic.
It's obvious that you're going to, I mean, okay.
Do you know of it? Okay, do you know of any? Okay, can you give me any examples where a human has produced something other than a human?
No, like I said, I can't give you any examples of organisms. I mean, that's an essential part of evolution, that organisms have offspring that are like themselves. If they didn't do that, then evolution wouldn't work, because that means that any mutation that occurs in one individual wouldn't be passed on to the next generation and wouldn't have the opportunity to spread. So the fact that individuals produce offspring that look like them is absolutely essential to evolutionary theory that work. And that goes back to Darwin. He recognized that. My question is about macroevolution and whether or not you understand what it is. So would there be any group of organisms that you would say it's reasonable to conclude that they share a single, even created kind?
Well, let's take the most obvious, humans. Do you know of any humans that have ever produced a non-human or have ever come from a non-human?
I don't expect them to.
Well, then they should, if evolution is true. This falsifies your theory.
No, not in a single generation. You never qualified this idea that like begets like. It is there's some generational limit on it, that you just said dogs give birth to dogs and dogs, that's it. So that leads everyone to believe that you're talking about a single generation. No, humans, you have like individuals from one generation to the next.
But do you believe humans came from something that was non-human? You can have as many generations in the past as you want to imagine. Let's go back 400 trillion generations.
But I'm asking. I'm trying to get you to answer a question about macroevolution and what it is, because
I'm trying to get you to answer a question.
Yeah, I think humans evolved from a non-human ancestor, and each generation during that process, that branching tree, phylogenetic bifurcating process of populations, each generation, individuals were giving birth to individuals that are like them. So throughout that process of change, within each generation, individuals were giving birth to individuals that are like them.
So how many
if I have a mutation in my germline, I'm going to pass that on to my offspring. That mutation is new to me. And I'm going to pass it on to my offspring because of this rule that offspring resemble parents. Now, over time, mutations start accumulating in different lineages. And if two lineages become independent and they don't have gene flow anymore, they're going to diverge and become more different from one another. But within that process, each generation, individuals are giving birth to offspring that resemble themselves. Now, again, I'm trying to ask you about macroevolution.
You're using the word kind to describe clades, and you are habitually avoiding the actual definition. A kind would be a clade that begins with a special creation. I distinguish these. You're the one equating them. Do not accuse me of making your mistake.
So, as a recap for Hovind supporters, so far you've seen how he's failed in areas such as chemistry, cosmology, physics, and obviously biology, but more of that later. Here he is failing again, this time with Mark Drysdale, and the issue concerns geology.
Thousands of these are found on top of mountain ranges. In Peru, 2 miles above sea level, they find 11-foot oysters closed, petrified.
Why wouldn't they?
Something radical happened.
Of course they do, and that goes against your belief. The bottom of Mount Everest, we've already said, used to be an ocean bottom, and it got pushed up when the tectonic plates pushed together. We would expect that. You're backing our position, but what you're doing is you're putting to your no, Kent, you laugh. We have always said that the top, we have tectonic. Why do you think mountain ranges are at the sides of that tectonic plates? It's because they're pushing into each other and they're pushing the seafloor up.
Correct. Why are the mountains going up? Because the plates are moving. Why are they moving, Mark?
Because one's sliding other and one's moving up. And we are continuously, why? Because we are continuously getting new seafloor bottoms, which is at the ridges. We know that. We see it happening every day. We know the exact spot in the middle of the ocean that part of the ocean floor is heading east and part of it's heading west. That is going to push the continents into each other. When you have a tectonic plate going under another tectonic plate, it's going to push it up.
As you are aware, Hovind believes that the Earth is only 6,000 years of age. But he also believes in other crazy myths, such as Noah's Ark and the Great Flood. And one of the questions which scientists ask people such as Hovind and other crazy creationists is, where did all the water come from? In this next clip, Mark Drysdale educates Hovind on the reasons why the flood did not happen.
I really hate to say your people can laugh in the background. I am going to hold you to this till the point that you threaten to quit. If in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, which is about 4,000 or 5,000 miles wide, if the sea floor drops and pushes, hold your hand up, that's the sea floor.
Sea floor drops.
Now, under your 10 kilometers, or 10 miles, 16 kilometers of crust, you have, let's say, 10 kilometers of water.
Right.
You have now dropped your 10 kilometers of water, or of crust.
We've switched places. It's now on top.
Kent, you just nailed it. You switch places. Where's the extra water? Where's the extra water to cover the continents?
Now, remember how Hovind struggled to define kinds for the various scientists. How do you think he got on with that question? Let's revisit it with Aaron Ra.
So show me two special creations that science would consider closely related. Same question been asking for an hour.
How about we ask for one? Would that be acceptable, Aaron? If there's one kind, created kind, we'll start there. Especially when it comes to elephants, mastodons, and things like that nature. What would be a created kind from that original kind that all species and pachyderms and mastodons and woolly mammoths came from?
And then we got to include Sirenians too, because the common ancestor of all elephants, also the common ancestor of Sirenians. So manatees are part of the elephant kind, if you want to conclude that way.
There's 30 or 40 different things that you could probably throw in there. But what do you call that original kind?
Hold it. Don't forget to include all the planets, because they're made of the same elements, so they're the same kind also. They all have the same 92 elements.
Is it possible, Kent, that you think that other people can listen to you and think that that was a smart answer
that
from
had
you?
nothing to do with what I just asked.
I don't understand how you guys can't get it. Let me.
You don't understand. Just leave the sentence there. We could end the show on that sentence, because that's the summary that I think everybody's gathered so far.
Honestly, I'm trying to be fair as possible. I really am. I'm just trying to clarify things for the audience and for the people that are involved in the discussion here. I'm not trying to show any kind of favoritism for anything. I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I asked you a question, Kent, in regards to what would be the original created kind that had been the predecessor of things like elephants and alpachyderms and woolly mammoths, and you answered something in relation to planets, and I'm not seeing the correlation there.
As you can see, Hovind's struggle with defining kinds goes on. Now, one of the other things that you should know about Hovind is that he doesn't believe in the fossil record. We can look at Australopithecus afarensis, Homo habilis, Neanderthals. We pretty much know the connection with Homo sapiens. But once again, Hovind will deny any such connection. Fossils to Hovind are just bones in the ground. But the one thing that he does struggle with, and you're going to see in the next selection of clips, is the genetic evidence, the DNA evidence. How does he answer the questions that the scientists pose to him regarding relatedness within species?
Can you explain to me what you understand by the term allele frequency?
Well, I guess let's save that for a separate debate also.
No. You just know. I think that's.
You're always welcome here.
That's very important.
I'm not prepared to handle that right now. I know what allele frequency is.
I haven't spoken over you all night. And I'll not do again. But for somebody that's had over 200 debates on evolution, and who constantly uses straw man arguments like an elephant has never given birth to a deck chair or something like that, right? You've just used the term allele. You've tried to poo-poo evolution using the term allele frequency. I think it's really important, and I'm not going to leave this point. I'm going to stick on it and stick on it and stick on it. Can you please explain what you understand by the term allele frequency?
No, I'd rather have you explain it and me see if that's what I understand. It's been too long since I studied that phrase. You're the one who brought it up. I said, do you think it came from a common man and woman? We see these variations and changes within the frequencies of the alleles that they produce, and therefore that's
here. That's not what's happening here. I've asked you a direct question, and we've said there's no dodging, and I won't dodge from you. You poo-pooed evolution using the term allele frequency, which means you should understand it. There's plenty of people watching in the chat. You know, I'm interested to hear what your understanding, not what my understanding of allele frequency is, but what your understanding is, so I can better understand your argument. I'm not going to better understand your argument by telling you what I think allele frequency is, okay? But I can understand your argument if you tell me what your understanding is. So please, can you tell us all what your understanding of allele frequency is?
No, I'd rather wait for the separate debate. Let's do that in
This is the debate on evolution.
The title of the debate was, what is the evidence for evolution?
Ken, this is a debate on evolution, and I'm sorry for speaking over you, but this is really important. This is a debate, and I do apologise for speaking over you, and I promise I will answer any question you want after this point. And I really do genuinely apologise for speaking over you, but I hope you realise it's a critical, important point, okay? Because we couldn't talk about isochron dating because you didn't understand it, so we moved on. We couldn't talk about ERVs because you said you don't know what they are, and we had to move on. But the very basic concept of allele frequency, we must surely know that you understand what that is, or at least I know what your understanding of that is, so we can move on in the conversation. you're not letting me, how can you have 200 debates and struggle with it? Can you please tell us what allele frequency?
Let him go ahead.
But are you saying that because there are frequency changes in the frequency of the alleles of the genes in the DNA, that is proof that we all came from a rock? Is that what you're trying to lead to?
Ken, I think what I'm saying is, and I'm going to be really polite about the way I say this, because I do respect you've been very polite in this debate, and I understand that you've got a very strong faith in creation, which is fine. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But I am going to say that you've got to stop arguing about the science of evolution if you can't articulate without having to look up what the term allele frequency means. That would be like me having a debate with somebody about Star Wars, which was the best Star Wars film, and them having to sit there and Google who Luke Skywalker was. That's the kind of level we're at. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I feel like I'll be bullying you if I carry on with that point. I actually feel quite bad for bringing it up already.
But I do kind of want to focus on this key point here, which is that you do agree that genetically my mother and I are related if you look at those genomes. So why can't you use that same logic between species? Because you use it within other species. You can do it with dogs. You can take my dog's a golden retriever. If you take her genome and you compare it to her mother's, they'll be very similar. You could compare her to a wolf and it'd be very, very similar. And you could go farther and farther back if you wanted to. But my question is specifically where you in particular, not using like books or cards or whatever, but specifically with genetics, where do you as an individual draw the line between me and my mother versus me and a chimp? Why do you draw that line?
When you did the saliva DNA test on different dog saliva people sent in to you or your lab, whoever did the test, were they able to demonstrate? They wanted to know what percentage pit bull, what percentage whatever.
Sure.
Did they ever ask for what percentage mosquito it was?
No, I don't think that they would do that because that wasn't the purpose. That wasn't what people are paying money for.
Are dogs and mosquitoes related, Erica? Why don't they find what percentage mosquito is a dog?
Well, I really do want to touch on that, but I would like to wrap up the genetics between humans and chimps first. So what's your thoughts on that?
So you have genetic evidence that a dog and a bear are related, and what is that evidence exactly? Because they have similar DNA? Told you. No, you didn't. You said, you said there's the word genetics is not. I want to be specific. What exactly makes you think that something was the father? You are the father of the bear and the dog. What exactly would make you think that? What part of the DNA structure? Is it the number of chromosomes? Is it the length of the chromosomes? Is it the arrangement of CATG? Exactly what is this evidence that you're saying, you're claiming is evidence for this ancestry, the parental aspect of the ancestor of dog and wolf, or dog and bear?
I explained this in a series I explained this in a video called Caniform Carnivore Cladogram Construction. I like alliteration. I can't help it. And there's a backup to this that also covers the cat side of the family tree. And these are in a series of videos, a five video series called Falsifying Phylogeny, which explains a number of other evolutionary principles, including the evolutionary laws that I just mentioned.
Well, can you just give me a 2-minute summary here? What is your reason?
It is, as I just explained, and I'm repeating the explanation again. It's just like doing a parental test where you're matching the commonality to see whether this person is the father or that person is the father. You're just extrapolating further back.
And I'll ask you again, maybe you'll get it this time. What exactly are you looking at to determine the parental?
I answered twice. I will answer a third time. Maybe you will be the one to get it this time, as I had it since the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we are just like a parental paternity test, where you're using a genetic matchup, right? Codon for codon, right? You're looking for the commonality between these genetic lines, genetic lineages. You're also looking at wherever they're applicable, ERVs and such. Whatever, I can't remember the other term. Whatever other commonalities take factor in genetic comparison. You're doing a genome sequence comparison to identify the ancestry, just like you would trace whether you are Danish in ancestry or Jamaican or what have you. It's the same concept.
So you're saying someone did a genome sequencing of a dog and a bear and found out that they have a common ancestor based on ERVs?
Not just someone, lots of people. Because the thing about science is that it has to be peer reviewed, which means that somebody does these tests and say, okay, I did these tests, and then other people have to go back and duplicate those tests and confirm that they get similar results, or they can confirm that this is what actually happens.
Do you think that if you submit your DNA to Ancestry.com or one of these services, that they could take that DNA and place your genome in the context of some population history, human population history? And how do you think they do that?
Well, I think they would very quickly trace mine back to Norway. I think because all 4 of my grandparents came over from Norway.
I get it, but how is that done? What sorts of genetic markers do they use to trace your ancestry to certain populations?
Well, I don't know the details on how they exactly do that, but I know we have DNA similarities between all the Norwegians.
How they do it?
Well, the DNA is incredibly complicated.
I can tell you how they do it.
Well, I'm not interested right now. I think if you look at the lines of code for
I asked you a question and you said you don't know. So
let me give you the answer that I have.
You just said you don't know how they do it. That was the question.
It's the DNA is incredibly complex, but I'm trying to get you to see a bigger picture. Comparing similar DNA between me and all other Norwegians might prove there are genetic markers that all Norwegians have and all Namibians do not have. Okay, that's probably true, but we're still human and we're still interfertile. You don't get it. You do not get it. Humans produce humans. You don't get it.
DNA is complicated, and there's a lot we don't know, but this we do know. Okay. We can use neutral genetic variation to place your genome in the context of a particular population history. And the exact same methodology, using that same neutral variation, is the type of variation that I'm talking about when we look deeper into evolutionary history, differences between species or common ancestry between species and families, etc. It's the same technique.
I understand, heard every word, and understand. Now, so the similarities that I have with other Norwegians, even though I've never been to Norway, that same type of data you're going to use to prove that humans and grass are related if you go back far enough. Is that your
variation? Yes, and there's a reason for that, because it's the same process. It's the same process. We can look for patterns of common ancestry when we look at neutral genetic variation. Again, it's 2 models, and the data are going to support. They're going to support the predictions of one model or the other. Now, I haven't heard your model necessarily make any clear predictions.
Okay, I'll make one right now. I predict humans will always produce humans. No matter what climate you go to, no matter what country you go to, no matter how far back in history you go, you will never see an example, where a human has produced a non-human or come from a non-human.
Well, Ken, I need
that's my prediction.
I need predictions that we can test without the benefit of a time machine.
If I can ask, Ken, because you have mentioned this before.
Sure.
If we do find a fossil, why does it matter if that particular fossil has had offspring or not?
My point would be, in a court of law, you could not prove that it is the ancestor of anybody.
My question is, why would it matter, though?
Well, because this is what they're claiming is their evidence for their theory. And it's not evidence for anything. It's evidence something died.
Let me go back to the Ancestry.com example. If you submit your DNA to Ancestry.com,
sure,
and then you get the results back in the mail, and you get something that says a certain percentage of your DNA comes from this population, another percentage comes from that, and you find those results generally believable, right?
Okay.
Do they send you the names of addresses of each and every one of your ancestors when you submit your DNA to Ancestry.com?
Oh, I doubt that, but they're all human. I guarantee they're all, without even me.
They don't. What we do is we get DNA and we can test hypotheses about relatedness that are built on common ancestry without actually showing common ancestors. So, for instance, I know that you're more related to your siblings, if you have siblings, than you are to your cousins. And I know that without ever knowing who your parents or your grandparents are.
Uh-huh.
So if you were adopted and we could test some people who are putatively perhaps maybe your siblings or your cousins, we could tell them apart without ever knowing your direct ancestors. So knowing direct ancestry is not something that is required for evolution in the first place. You keep saying, well, the fossils, we don't know that they're our ancestors. We don't know if they have kids. Sure, who cares? That's not part of how we test ideas in evolution to begin with. So it doesn't matter. The fossil record doesn't preserve genealogies. It preserves evidence of common ancestry.
So it doesn't preserve evidence of common ancestry either. It preserves evidence that something died. End of story. It doesn't preserve evidence of common ancestry.
The fossils and their comparative analysis is what I'm talking about.
Ken, let me ask you this: if you had in future generations, let's say we go 5 or 6 future generations down the line to your great grandchildren, and we looked at their DNA, we compared it to a fossil of one of your cousins now that's extant now. Your cousin may have not had any offspring, but could they not tell that your great 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 grandchildren have a common relationship to your cousin now?
Oh, I would predict I would bet any amount of money you want to bet that my great 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 grandchildren will be 100% human.
That wasn't my question. That's not my question, though. My question is, if we took the DNA sample from your great 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 grandkids and we looked at your extant cousin today, could we not tell that they have a common relationship to your grandparents?
They would find out that it's human DNA in every single case.
Okay.
There may be variations.
They find out that it's human. They know it's human. They know your great-great-great-great grandkids are human. They know all that. Now, what can they tell about the relatedness between a cousin that you had now? That's what we want to know. Not whether or not they're human, but what can we tell about their relatedness?
Sure. They could tell probably how diverse they are and how
nothing about their relatedness.
They could probably tell how closely related, but they're all within the gene code of humans.
That's all.
That's not it. That's not you, because you're claiming Herman. You're
an ancestral sample. Direct.
You are imagining that we are related to grass.
Well, hang on. You guys are talking over each other, so let's.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
We're not related to grass.
So we're not talking about grass right now. We're just talking about humans. The fact
he believes grass and humans are related, and he wants me to pay to have him teach that to kids.
Okay, but
I resent that.
Ken, hang on. The fact is, though, you've said that the great grandchildren we can tell are related to your extant cousin today. If your cousin did not have any offspring, he still has a common ancestor.
As you can see from those last few clips, Hovind once again has demonstrated a lack of knowledge in relation to science, this time in the area of biology. And from time to time that became quite embarrassing to watch. Also, his attempts to avoid scientific facts about ancestry and relatedness linked to genetics brought him to the edge of frustration and anger as he attempted to avoid those questions. And boy, did he try to avoid those questions. There is no doubt that my film has demonstrated that Hovind lacks knowledge in areas such as physics, chemistry, geology, cosmology, biology, and yet he attempts to debate scientists in these areas because they are all linked to evolution. His disrespect towards scientists who have spent years dedicated to learning their discipline and who have gained degrees and PhDs is quite concerning. Hovind himself has a qualification in religious studies from an unaccredited college in America. But in relation to science, no. And this is something his supporters should know. Hovind does not understand science. His scientific knowledge comes from Wikipedia and science journals. And because he doesn't understand science, he cannot argue science in his debates. Therefore, he goes back to that script. Not only does he go back to that script, he also goes back to being disrespectful to the scientists who are debating him. One of those areas of disrespect is to continually tell the scientists that their science is a religion. Well, if we really look at that, Hovind himself, who claims to be a religious man, we could actually say that he's actually an atheist. For example, he firmly believes in the religion he follows and his perspective of the Bible. And yet, if there were only 100 religions on this planet, only 100 religions, then Hovind would be an atheist in respect of, say, Islam or Judaism. So for 99 of those religions, Hovind would certainly be an atheist. In respect of his religious beliefs, they are really based on geography. For example, he comes from the Bible Belt in America, But if Hovind was born, say, in Baghdad, he would have grown up a Muslim, so his faith would have been Islamic-based. If he was born in Connemara on the west coast of Ireland, the chances are he would have been brought up a Roman Catholic and been a firm supporter of the Pope.
Well, Ken, people can sit down and talk about exactly what I've been talking about, and we do. And I've been in science for 25 years, as a professional person for 25 years. And I've sat down with a lot of people. And among professional scientists, this is basic stuff. There is no disagreement in any of the people that I've sat and talked to for 25 years.
You're sitting with the wrong crowd.
I'm going to finish. And the people that I talk to come from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different religious backgrounds, a lot of different political backgrounds, a lot of different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. There's no one common denominator that makes people, ideological common denominator that makes people believe in evolution. There are Catholics who believe in evolution. There are Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Christians who believe in evolution. There are atheists who believe in evolution, of course. There are evangelical Christians who believe in evolution. There are Jews who believe in evolution. There are Buddhists who believe in evolution. So it's not a religious view or worldview. You know, the geneticist Theodosius Dobzhansky wrote a paper in the early 70s to the American Science Teachers, a journal for the American Science Teachers Association. And the title of the paper was "Nothing in Biology Makes Sense Outside of the Light of Evolution." Dobzhansky was an Eastern Orthodox Christian. And even today, that statement, "Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution," is on a plaque in the science building at the University of Notre Dame on the floor, on a big tile on the floor. So this has nothing to do with people's religion. Nothing. It makes no difference to me. I could change my religious beliefs tomorrow, and it wouldn't have any effect at all on how I view the evidence for evolution. So this notion that it's a religion is nonsense. It's an argument that creationists use so that they don't have to argue the science.
I thought I would let Professor Mayers have that last word on Hovind and Hovind's disrespect for the scientific community by stating that any scientist who supports evolution has a religion. Obviously, that is not true. So, who is Hovind? What is Hovind? At the very least, Hovind is an arrogant narcissist who really doesn't understand science. But at the very worst, he's a con man. And if you are a supporter of Hovind, he is taking you for every penny you have.